From New York and on the new Hot 97 app, Ebro in the morning on Hot 97.
Ebro in the morning, Laura Stiles, Rosenberg, give it up, Michael Rubin, owner of the Philadelphia 76ers and the New Jersey Devils. I did not know you own the New Jersey Devils.
Well, I'm one of the owners of the Devils and Philadelphia Sixers.
For how long?
We bought the group of us bought the Sixers in fall of 2011, and we bought the Devils a few years later. But I am at my core a basketball guy, and I know a lot less about hockey.
But you're the guy that we know, right? Is that like a group decision that everybody?
No, I'd say just look. I'm probably more of a relatable guy, and probably just a little bit, kind of younger and kind of in the culture. So I think it's for this world that we're talking about, I'm probably just a little more visible.
When I started hearing about your friendship with Meek Mill, at first I was a little skeptical, right? Because I heard about it and I go, okay, this makes sense. They're owning a team in Philadelphia, leaning into one of the bigger young personalities in Philadelphia helps the community relationship. But is this authentic was my question. Or is this just to show that we're close with the community, and it seems like we care. But over the years, I got to say, you proved me wrong, and I'm happy about that.
Thank you. I'll tell you, if people thought it was calculated, it was probably one of the most unpopular things in the beginning. We took so much abuse as a team for my friendship with Meek.
Really?
Oh yeah,
From
for
who?
sure. Oh, when Meek went to prison, and I kind of between myself and Jay-Z led the revolt to get him out of prison. There was. So many ticket holders that were just against it. Hey, I'm getting rid of my tickets.
Really?
Oh, absolutely.
They viewed it as you trying to save a criminal, a ne'er-do-well.
And it's funny because people always believe what the press says. And if you look at what people said about Meek in the early days versus how people see him today, it's completely different. Today we see him for who he is. When this first started, people saw what the judge put out and what the district attorney put out. So it was completely, not even the district attorney because they didn't put out anything negative, but they just saw whatever he had been charged for. So it's a completely different environment today than it was then.
Now, was criminal justice reform something you were always interested in, or did it change once your friendship with
No,
Meek
I had
started?
zero interest. I didn't even understand it. I mean, people don't get. Meek's been my boy for a long time. Like we met, probably more than 5 years ago now. He was one of my closest friends when he went to prison. This last go around. So I didn't want to get involved in this. It's just kind of like if this happens to one of your good friends, you don't have a choice.
That's what he told us.
Yeah. We met at the All-Star game maybe 5 years ago. It was actually a funny situation because my daughter, who's grown up in the sports business, entertainment business, she's not really fazed by much, but she happened to, in the early days, she was 8 at this point, she was a big Nicki Minaj fan. And so they ended up randomly sitting next to us at the All-Star game. And so my daughter, who's generally like oblivious, doesn't care, she's like, really into Nicki. And I'm like, and so Meek and I just ended up talking while my daughter was chatting up Nicki. And he was like, oh, wait, you're the guy from the Sixers, and I'm like, and I'll be honest, I had no idea who he was. And then he just started peppering me with business questions. And it was like, literally, he reminded me of like a raw version of me when I was a kid because I barely made it out of high school. I didn't go to college. I mean, I went for half of a semester. And all of my learning has been through asking questions. I'm like a sponge. And Meek was exactly the same way. He's, 5 minutes after meeting him, if I want to do this, how would I do it? And if I want to, build this, what would you do? And just question after question after question. And I just saw in him this really street smart kid who honestly had so much potential. And we weren't that friendly in the beginning. Maybe the first year he came to a few games, and we were at I think the story's pretty well known now, but we were at a Sixers game. The team was terrible at this point. And we were at halftime, and I said, what are you doing after the game? He says, what are you doing? I said, I'm actually going to go to the Borgata. You want to come? He's like, man, I'd love to come, but I can't. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, I'm on probation. I'm like, okay, so you can't go to the Borgata? He's like, no, I'll get arrested. I'm like, you're what? He's like, I'll get arrested if I go to the Borgata. I'm like, I didn't have any understanding. I didn't have
no
any,
context.
No context. I mean, I had a few friends, from corporate America who'd gone to, prison for doing stupid business shit.
Right.
But I didn't know anyone who had, I didn't even know how probation worked. And he basically explained to me that he had to get permission to leave Philadelphia. And so I didn't think much about it. We let's say the first year maybe we hung out 10 times, 20 times, and but by the time Meek went to prison 2 years ago, he was one of my closer friends. I mean, he was been on 50 trips with me.
Said you came to his kid's birthday party.
Yeah,
Like,
we
I
were
mean,
really friendly. Yeah. I actually remember going to his birthday party, his either 28th or 29th birthday party. I was definitely, it was like, everyone he grew up with, and it was me. But I had a great time. I love seeing Meek's family, how close everybody is, and it was fun. And yeah, he's been to so much of my things and me to his things. And this is a guy who, we probably talked on the phone every day for the year or two before he went to prison. So what really happened was, when he had the two issues, the pop of the wheelie on social media and breaking up the fight in the airport, and the judge brought him in on a probation violation. He was called into court for a probation hearing. I had always heard these stories from him about this really crazy judge. And when you get in my position, you generally hear a lot of people's problems, and a lot of times you hear them, but there's can't
two
get,
sides,
you can't get involved in other people's problems. But at this point, I knew Meek well enough. Like, I knew his character. Like, I knew what a good guy was, and he was a real friend. Again, we'd spent so much time together. So I started doing a little kind of digging on my own just to validate what he had been telling me, and everything he told me, I kept validating back channel. Kind of that, probation really thought he was a really good person, that they thought he was getting a really raw deal. And then the whole thing happened, a couple years earlier that I had heard about from him at the time, about the judge asking Meek and Nicki to make a song, give her a shout out. And so, I always heard these crazy stories. And so now, the summer before this happened, Meek was always around. And I used to make fun of him, be like, bro, do you need a job? Like, he'd be at my house a lot. He'd always be, because he lived 10 minutes away from me.
Right.
He'd be stopping over. He'd be, he'd always, anytime I said, hey, let's do something, he was always available. So I'd be like, bro, do you need a job? Like, what's going on here? And finally, I'm like, okay, we got to help fix this probation thing, because he couldn't tour. So here's a guy whose job is to be a performer, but he
Right.
can't actually work. His family's dependent on him. His whole network's dependent on him, and he couldn't actually work. So now now he's like one of my close boys. Now I'm mad. So at the same time, the judge calls him in for a probation hearing. So I said to him, look, do you want me to write you a letter? Last time you kind of had a bunch of kind of, well-known kind of celebrity backers. Might be good. I'm from the business community. Maybe I can help you. And he's like, look, if you don't mind, I would love that. And I kind of wrote a letter and explained our relationship. And that letter, I don't know if you guys saw it, it ended up getting out there. And that it was like kind of from the heart, like, here I am, this business guy, created more than 10,000 jobs in Pennsylvania, had done a lot in our state, it's where I'm from. And I know this guy really well. I'm like, this is a guy I would leave, my mom spent real time with this guy, my kids spent real time with this guy. I would leave
Character, he's showing his character.
Yeah, I would honestly leave all my money with him and trust him, know it's all going to be there when I get back. I trust this guy authentically. And I wrote a pretty strong letter. And I was hoping the judge would call me to get a little bit of background. I heard nothing. And then I was never planning to go to the court hearing. And then that Monday morning, I just called to give him like a pick-me-up speech. I'm like, yo, bro, you're going to be good. He's like, I'm really nervous. I'm like, you're fine. Like, don't worry about this.
I think that's how everyone felt to some degree.
Everybody, for sure. And so he basically, he said to me, look, if you have time, you can come. I'd love you to see this. And I looked at my schedule. I didn't have to be out of town. I'm like, fuck it, I'm coming. And so basically I went to this thing. The hearing was supposed to start at 1:00. And now I'd been in court once for a business issue. I'd never been in a courtroom like this before. So you go in, first they put your phone like in a little bag, and I'm having now I'm losing my phone, so I can't communicate with anyone. I think it's gonna be like a 15-minute court hearing. So we get up there. She shows up 45 minutes late, the judge.
Well, that's a good sign.
And now I'm like, but first of all, I can't tell anyone I'm not going to be back in the office. I'm like starting to miss stuff in the afternoon. I'm starting to get already.
Now you're really pissed.
Is that common, Ebro, that a judge would show up 45 minutes late?
Why are you asking me? I've
I don't
never
know.
been in
Laura?
court.
I've only
never
been to a
heard of
couple
that,
trials. I've been to a couple trials, and the
I've
judge is
never.
definitely on time.
I think it's unusual.
I was gonna say, because the level of disrespect, considering the whole thing's about respect for the courtroom, the idea that you would have the
I think I
entire
went to
courtroom.
traffic court one time, was hoping the cop didn't show up, and he did.
So you got
on
played
time.
On time. He was ready, to give me that ticket.
But the
I still
idea
beat
that-
it, but still.
The idea that the judge would keep the entire courtroom and everyone waiting for them.
And by the way,
individually, that's
this
crazy.
was a quiet time in Meek's life, I think, because there were not a lot of people in the courtroom. There's maybe, a few, maybe there are 15 people in the courtroom or something like that. It was a pretty small group. But so she comes in 45 minutes late, and this is what was a life-changing event for me. So the probation officer gets up and speaks first. And the probation officer is speaking about Meek glowingly. And it was everything I had heard back channel. You know, he's a model probationer. He's done everything we've asked. You know, we've seen him develop immensely over the last 10 years. And the judge starts screaming at the probation officer.
Saying what?
Like, you don't know what you're talking about. You've only been with this case in the last year. Like, you in all due respect, you're just, you're not right to talk about this. I'm like, what is, now it's like a Jerry Springer show going on.
Right.
So then, she gets done, and and the probation officer was strong in Meek's, defense, to be honest. And then the district attorney gets up and it's like, we recommend, the state or whatever the state recommends no, says they recommend no action. And so she sits down, and I looked over to the couple lawyers. I said, I don't get what we're doing here. I watched the probation officer and the DA both say they recommend no action. Why are we here? And the lawyer's like, oh, don't worry about it. You never, ever, if a DA and a probation officer recommend nothing to happen, nothing ever happens.
Right.
And so so now they call like an intermission in this what I thought would be a 15-minute hearing. We're now like a couple hours into it. And Meek and I walk to the bathroom like, yo, bro, you're good. Don't worry about this. And he's like, no, Michael, I'm nervous. I'm like, you just had the probation officer and DA say there's no issue. So we go back in the courtroom, and
At this point, does Meek know that the judge is obsessed with him already?
he's been telling me that for years.
Yeah.
Okay,
By the
he's
way,
100%.
Meek came
Yes.
up here and said the same
Okay,
thing.
yeah, all right. I just wanna get the- I just wanna get the
100%.
timeline. So that's why he's scared.
I had heard that for years, but it just seemed to like a guy who had no interest in criminal justice reform, no understanding of it.
It seemed ridiculous.
It seemed impossible. Like I would think the system would work the right way, and that's
Right.
how idiotic I was.
And we're going to get back to
Yeah,
that too,
right,
because
right.
there's a lot of back to owners and people thinking that you're helping Meek because they don't really understand how poor people are getting taken advantage of by the system. But we'll get back to that.
I think I'll finish this, and then it's a great topic to get into because one I've become incredibly passionate about because of what's happened to Meek. So we go back in, and the judge sits down and says, "I'm sentencing you." And I'm like, okay, is he gonna get like a week of house arrest, or is he gonna get like another day of probation? Like I'm confused. And so they said, hey, Michael, can you get up and speak? And I'm like, yeah, I'll just get up and talk about my relationship with him and how well I know him. Because Meek is a guy who I knew. Like he brings people together, and you see now he's shining now, but he's always been a guy that could bring people together. He's never been a guy, and I've been with him so many times where you'd ever see anything other than a personality that unites
He's
people.
not divisive.
No. And so, and that was a big thing to me. Like, we need more people in the world to bring people together. Like I hate the, different sides and all the politics and all the bullshit. I just want people to like kind of come together in life. And so, I get up and I speak and I talk about my relationship with him, and the judge will not look me in the eyes. And that was the most telling thing for me because I'm, the way I'm looking at you guys, and she won't even look up at me. And I was like ready to say like, hello,
So weak.
like, can you make eye contact with me and talk to me? Like I'm trying to communicate with you.
As a judge, you're trying to be respectful.
Right. But I obviously I knew if I did anything out of my anger at the time, that would only worsen Meek's situation.
Of course.
So I was just super respectful of the judge in the courtroom as I needed to be. I would sit down, and then Meek speaks, and then the judge sentences him. The judge stops and says, I'm sentencing you to 2 to 4 years in state penitentiary. And now Meek gets up, and he's taking his watch off. He's taking his wallet out. He's giving it to his mom, and Meek's eyes are tearing up. And I don't cry over anything. I basically start crying. And I looked at Meek, and I looked at his mom, and I said, I'm not stopping until I get you out of prison. And then fortunately, there's a woman sitting next to me who I had never met before, Desiree Perez from Rock Nation. Mm-hmm. And she says, I'm not stopping until he gets out of prison. And essentially, Jay and I joined forces at that point and said, we can't let this sit. And had the truth be told, and people want to give me more credit than they should, had I not been in the courtroom that day and seen this, I probably would have done nothing. But seeing it firsthand, it was like it took over my body. Like I was I couldn't help but to want to take everything I could to put into this.
And so, like, that feeling that you have is the same feeling that somebody like myself has felt my entire life, right? Or because of the world that we operate in around this music and individuals who don't have the resources and are picked on because they can't defend themselves by a system that not only makes money off of cash bail and this whole racket of going to court and public defenders and, conviction rates and these other things that are marketed to the wealthy, right? Because when conviction rates are high and crime is down, the mayor looks good and the chief police, no matter who they've put in to jail, or in the case of Pennsylvania, has the largest population of people that are under court supervision.
Third largest probation and parole rate in the country.
Right. And on top of that, doesn't allow media in the courtrooms, doesn't, you know what I mean? It's very, kept, it's not transparent at all, right? For you to see that for yourself, now you're passionate, you're active, you're involved. But are people who have the wealth you have or come from the places you come from, is your involvement allowing them to see something that they were never paying attention to?
I think that it is, but there was a really interesting transition in the middle because I thought in the beginning that the system still worked, and this was only about one bad judge and about Meek. And what happened was, through that process, I realized that it wasn't just a bad situation with Meek.
Right.
That actually the system is fundamentally as broken as you could imagine. And so what happened, and then I'll get to answer your question, was I walked out of that courtroom and said, we need, and I've grown up in Pennsylvania. I know a lot of people. It's a relatively small state. I was trying to use every resource I had. And the first thing we did was we actually hired investigators. Because that to me was something like just sitting there, you knew something wasn't right. And the investigators originally looked at all of the judges' cases, and they didn't really see anything wrong. They came back and they said, there's nothing, we're not finding anything wrong here. I said, I'm telling you, there's something wrong with this woman. I said, keep looking. And they came back and said, wait a second. Her cases are normal, but she has 35 individual lawsuits against individual, as an individual, not as a judge. I'm like,
Wait.
What? 35 individual lawsuits she had against individuals. I'm like, go out and meet every one of those individuals. And then we started finding all kinds of craziness.
Bro, we need to get rich like that, where you could just be like, go figure it out.
But by the way, that's the truth be told, had we not had the resources,
Oh, yeah, of course.
he'd still be in prison.
Yeah.
Because what happened...
Well, that's hard to do, get this information.
And now, it's funny, if you asked me 2 years ago, how the criminal justice system worked, I'd say it worked well in 99.9% of the cases. If you ask me today, I'd say every single person is overcharged, and then they make you plead down because no one has resources, so you can't beat the system.
That's right.
It is fundamentally broken. It couldn't be more broken. So what happened was, so now they go out and they find all these individuals, and we found crazy situations. Like we found a police officer who was doing construction at her house as a side project. She kept changing the specs. Finally, is like, you've changed it 5 times. You have to pay me more if you want to keep changing it. She fires him. Then she calls the police and said that he broke into her house to steal the tools.
Oh, my
and then she
God.
told somebody in her house that she hid the tools off-site. She then sent an email, which we had got the computer and got everything, saying, when you testify, here's what I want you to say. Okay? And we got all of this. And she's still a sitting judge. It's actually crazy.
So she's a bona fide psychopath. Or close to. I know you probably need to be mindful not use that language, but
Also,
No.
We'll go a step further.
Hold on a second. I'm good with it. Yes, she is.
she's a bona fide psychopath.
Yeah,
Okay.
she is.
'Cause that's
Well,
what it
and
sounded.
not only that, but she clearly uses her job and to leverage against people and scare
Of
them.
course, it's
And
an abuse
then
of
she was
power.
using her job for her own business personally, because we found different in some of these lawsuits where she was basically threatening people. She owns a bunch of, she's like a slumlord on the side. And so she owns real estate where she'd be like, hey, you have to get out of here. I'm a judge. If you don't leave, you're going to be in trouble because I'm a judge. Like she uses her judgeship to threaten people. We found multiple cases of this. So now what happened, and this is what was really fascinating. So I was as obsessed as she was with Meek, I was obsessed with like showing this. And I would go to prison to see Meek probably like almost every week. And Meek finally came in there. I would tell him all the things we're finding. And Meek said to me, Michael, I know you're obsessed with this judge, but how many times have I told you I didn't point the gun that I was originally charged from? He told me that from the day I met him. And I didn't understand. He'd be like, Michael, if you point a gun at, of a black kid.
We read it one time, Mike. We read it one time on Wikipedia, on the air. Remember that day? I was like,
Yeah.
yo, you know what his original charge was? That he pointed a gun at 2 police officers and they chased him down and beat him. I was like, in what? That doesn't even happen in the movies.
Right.
Where someone points a gun at 2 police officers.
He would've
No
been
shots are
alive.
fired. And
Of
all
course.
they did was apprehend him and rough him up.
And now I get that. But then, he told me this. I had heard the story from him 100 times before he went to prison. I didn't point the gun. He really, because I think he wanted me to know that, like, he wasn't what he was charged with, but I didn't care. Like, I looked at him as he's 27, 28 years old
You
now.
were 19, then you made a mistake.
Yeah,
whatever.
who cared? I didn't care. They pointed the gun or not. It didn't mean anything to me because anyone can do dumb
But he
shit.
just wanted you to understand, like, that's impossible. Like, it couldn't even happen.
That's what he wanted me to understand. And so now I leave the jailhouse. It was a Saturday, and I call the investigator and I say, the lead investigator, I'm like, you got to look at the original arrest. I said, Meek said to get the gun because there's going to be marks on the gun from him throwing it. Maybe that can prove it. And so we shifted the investigation from the judge to the original arrest. And then the craziest thing happened. The investigators literally within like a week, they go out and they interview the first cop, who was one of the 2 arresting officers. He says, oh no, Meek didn't point the gun. The whole thing's a lie. And they call me. They're like excited. They call me right away. I'm like, what? What'd you say? He didn't point the gun? The cop said that? I'm like, well, he signed an affidavit. They're like, yes, we've got him with us now. We're preparing an affidavit. So this is now around Super Bowl of 2018. So Meek calls me, like, I talk to him, generally once a day. He calls me from prison. I am so excited. I'm like, you're getting out of jail right away. You're going to be out of here within a couple of days. We found one of the original officers. He said you didn't point the gun. And Meek, he buys it. He's really excited. And then that was Super Bowl of 2018. He didn't get out of prison for another 3 months. And that's when I realized the system was so fundamentally broken because now we have a guy who we know is innocent.
Yeah.
Who we have an affidavit for one of the 2 arresting officers saying the thing's a lie. And then the other cop who arrested him, who was the only person who testified, he was on a list of cops that were too dirty to testify that the DA's office had been holding back for the past 10 years that they knew.
They won't even let him talk. That's how corrupt they are.
That's correct. And so now I'm like, this guy's got to get, now we can't get him out of prison. I'm like, this can't, like, how is this happening?
And the cop's still a working cop.
No, he was forced to retire because he got caught lying to the FBI. By the way, the whole unit was all dirty. All these cops, they were basically in a drug unit that basically robbed people, set people up, and they all
Something like you'd see in the movies.
Training Day. It was like Philadelphia's version of Training Day. It really was. And so that's when I realized the system was fundamentally broken. And my conversation with Meek shifted from when we get you out of prison to, hey, once you get out of prison, it was all about getting him out of prison for the first 3 months. For November, December, January, it was all about getting him out of prison. And by the way, I was completely wrong. I told him when I went in, I'll have you out of prison in a week. I told him, he was getting out for Thanksgiving, then he was getting out for Christmas, then he was getting out for New Year's, then he was getting out. Like, I kept telling him, you're going to get out because it just didn't seem impossible.
They can put you in so fast, but they can't get you out.
I learned it's very hard. I want to say this in the very politically correct way, but it's very hard to get an African-American person out of prison. I mean, it's just like
think about it. Think about the situation, who he is and who you are, and still how hard it was to do. So imagine if you were just a regular dude.
You have no shot.
Well,
no, absolutely no
you
shot.
have no shot. But really what they're fighting against, right, which is the same reason that they won't let cops testify who are corrupt, is they're fighting against this conversation about the lifting of the veil, because now if you can't trust your police department, you can't trust judges, right? Who can you trust? And that's what the fight really is about.
And here's the issue. And a lot of times there's good people in a broken system. And the system, I think about this all the time now. Anytime you get charged, you get overcharged. That is the way the system works. So whatever someone does, give them 10 times the amount, and then you make them plead down, and 99.99% of people can't fight that because they don't have the resources. So what Meek and I started talking about when he was in prison now, we knew he had to get out, right? We've now proven he was innocent. He had to get out. We started saying, as soon as you get out, we need to help fix this. And I'm not out there like the way I think, but sometimes shit does happen for a reason. I kind of felt like, you know what? Maybe this happened for a reason. Maybe Meek went in there. It would help him fix his situation permanently. We could then help other people. And so as soon as Meek got out, I said, like, we need to start a massive movement to fix this because, and Meek used to always tell me this is what happens all the time. I'd say this isn't what happens all the time, but he was right. I was wrong. And we had the story. I think this has been widely told at this point. But the day Meek went to prison at like 6 o'clock on a Monday, I think it was November 6th of 2017, and the phone rings like an hour later. And I'm at my house, but I didn't recognize the number, but I've been calling so many people trying to get people to help. I picked it up. And he says, and I pick it up. I'm like, hello? He's like, I told you so. I'm like, what? He's like, I told you so. I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, I told you there are two Americas. How many times have I told you there's two Americas? There's Black America and there's America for everyone else. This is what I told you happened. You didn't believe me. But it was the first thing he's thinking was that he was right, I was wrong. As the guy's in prison. But he was like, it was like he had told me all along that this was what would happen, and this is what happens to Black America. And I'm like, it just, you had to see it firsthand. So yes, to answer your question, I think people from my world, which is the majority of the population in America, have no understanding. It's not that you asked me, did I care before? No, I didn't care. I didn't understand. It wasn't, it didn't hit home. But for me, when you have such a good friend taken away from you for doing nothing, then how do you not get involved? I would have been a horrible individual if I didn't get involved. And I think the biggest thing we need to do now, it's why we started the Reform Alliance, is we need to do two things. One is educate people, and I mean everybody in the country. And then two is change the laws on a state-by-state basis. And we're 100% focused on probation and parole reform, where we want to get the laws to make sense. And there's really some simple changes that we want to do. Put caps on how long you can be on probation. In Pennsylvania, as an example, 34 states in this country have caps on probation. Pennsylvania doesn't. So if Meek lived in New York, he couldn't be on probation for more than 5 years. But in Pennsylvania, there's no cap. He's been on probation for 12 years. He has another 5 years left of probation. He may have the Guinness Book of World Records for longest probation.
Wait.
That's insane.
Even though it's been
insane.
proven that the original crime was not true, he's still on probation.
Yes, the Supreme Court came in and ordered his release April 24th of last year, and he's still on probation today. He's out, ordered by the Supreme Court. Now, what I'm really excited about for the first time, and this is really why I want to be here today, is July 16th, coming up in 2 weeks, is a really big moment for us because for the first time, we now have what I think is we have an appellate court who's going to have 3 judges that's going to review Meek's case, and that's something that we've been waiting for really ever since I had any conversation around this. I've always heard about this biased judge who is obsessed with Meek, and everything that we heard is true plus some. Now, the district attorney came out and said, you're right. Not only did the DA say you need to get a new trial, the DA also said you need a new judge because your judge is biased. So on July 16th, 3 appellate judges are going to hear this case, and I think these are going to be 3 judges that we would expect to be from the judicial system, that would listen to the facts and look at the laws and listen to the district attorney, listen to all the facts. So I'm really excited about that. That's a chance for Meek to finally, come on the right side of this.
Do you are you surprised that now, as this judge or even these cops or any of these people that get involved in this sort of ruining of someone's life can literally do this at their job, and there's no repercussions for them?
Yes, I'm completely surprised by it. But if you would have asked me 2 years ago, I would have said it never happens. Now I'd say I expect it to happen now. And again, it's not, the whole system's built wrong. Like if you go out and, you get in a, fight in a bar, and before you know it, you have 17 charges against you, then you're going to have to plead down because you don't have the resources. And so the whole, it's almost like the system's more broken. It's not, there are a lot of good people in the system. Like I respect law enforcement. I appreciate that law enforcement wants to keep our communities safe, but the whole system is built to kind of entrap, minorities, to be honest.
And poor people specifically.
Correct. 100%. And that's everybody that's in the system. So it needs a complete overhaul. What I can tell you is what we're going to do in probation and parole, I think is going to really change the system because there's 6.7 million people in the system in the United States. By the way, in prison and jail, 5 times the rate of the rest of the world is our prison and jail population. That's 2.2 million people. There's 4.5 million people on probation and parole. If we just go back and make some very logical changes on a state-by-state basis, we can get millions of people out of the system that shouldn't be in the system. So today you have, as I was saying, there's been no caps in Pennsylvania on probation. So he's been on probation, and the time he has left, 17 years. Meek could literally, if Meek smoked a joint tonight and he had a urine test next month, which he still has every single month, Meek still has to go to probation and take P tests, okay? If he tested positive, he would be put back in prison. Okay, how do you put someone in prison for smoking weed, which has become illegal in most places? It makes no sense. So we're going to what we want to do is get caps on how long you can be on probation, and then we want to have caps on being sent to prison for a technical violation. I never believed that you could go to jail or prison for not committing a crime. That's the craziest thing. How do you go to jail because you don't commit a crime? But somebody you got a job, and you guys, someone in this room has a job, and they're on probation, and they've got to go for a hearing at 10 o'clock, except they're going to be fired from their job if they leave to go to the hearing.
Or even coming in contact with a cop. Let's say you get pulled over on a traffic stop.
I'll give you the best one. How about if you're on probation, you can't come in contact with a felon? What percentage of people who come from the area where you're in this situation have friends that are felons? Like everybody, it's like it's impossible. So it's like the law was built to entrap you.
Well, you've seen the 13th on Netflix, which is based on slavery, right?
Yeah,
and a lot of this is about the monetization of, and criminality of people who can't defend themselves, which are mostly black and brown, in a capitalist country that's trying to make money and figure out revenue streams. So I ask you, in this disruption, because that's what it is, how many people are not happy with you because you are, by doing this, ruining some revenue streams?
I don't even give the time of day to the people whose revenue we could be taken away. I will tell you, when this started, it was my business world was unhappy with me. And there were not many people that were supportive up front. So this happened in November of 17. And I made one good phone call, which was the commissioner of the NBA. And because, I've been involved around basketball, with my day job with Fanatics, my with the company that most of my wealth has come from. So I called Adam Silver. I said, Adam, got to talk to you about something important. You know Meek, you've met him before. He's, one of my closest friends. I explained to him what happened. I said, I need to take a stand, and the Sixers are going to get pulled into this. I need you to be okay with that. And Adam said to me, Michael, you know what? I've known you for, your entire adult life. I trust your judgment. I've seen him. If you tell me he's a great guy and you need to take us back, you've got, the NBA full support. Other than that, in the beginning, everybody was against me. Like, I was getting phone calls from a lot of people in business saying, don't get involved with this. Suppose he does something wrong again in the future. Like, this is going to be bad for your reputation. I didn't give a shit. I'm like, in one ear, out another. And so what's happened was, once we proved through the investigators that he never did what he was originally charged of, and that everyone saw all the craziness come out from the judge and all the things that she had done, then the sentiment changed. And so by the time he got out of prison, I think a lot of people start to really support us. And I'll tell you, the thing that's good right now, sometimes you just need to be lucky, and we're lucky on the timing. And I'm not into politics at all. I didn't even know. I joked, the governor, who was very involved in helping on Meek's situation in Pennsylvania, I didn't even know who the governor was before. We bought a company in Pennsylvania, Majestic, the baseball uniform company. And I met him when we bought the company. And I was joking with him, I didn't even know who you were before, we bought this company. Right. So, I'm not a politics guy. But now you've got both sides, Democrats and Republicans, who believe this is a really screwed up issue that we need to fix. So I think Meek having probation torture him his entire adult life, us starting the foundation and the movement around probation and pro reform, which is 2/3 of the criminal justice system, and the whole country being united that we need reform here, I think our timing is perfect. So yes, we're running people over and we're pissing some people off, but that's what you got to break glass to kind of make progress in life. So, but I'll tell you, it's not like when it started, they were dark days. Like everyone told me I was nuts. Everybody. So and now I think we convert people person at a time.
So reform, Van Jones.
Yeah.
Jay-Z.
Yeah.
Kim Kardashian.
Nope. But Kim's a friend of the family. So what happened was Meek got out of prison, and we started it with myself, Jay-Z, Robert Kraft, the owner of the Nets, Joe and Clara Tsai, Robert Smith, Mike Novogratz, and Dan Loeb. I think I got everybody. I'm looking around. Yeah, I think I get. There's eight of us starting. We're about to actually have a big announcement in the next few weeks about another big addition who's a huge force within criminal justice reform. So,
well, I guess the reason I brought up Kim is because she's doing some work too, right?
Kim's awesome, by the way. I met Kim for the first time about 6 months ago. She is, in a lot of ways, kind of like me. She got converted to this. Like, I don't think she understood it. And then she saw it and she became obsessed with it. And she's making a big difference. I think she's got a big voice, obviously, much more powerful platform than I do. And so she's out there really making a real difference. And she's a real ally of ours, but she's not part of the Reform Alliance.
It's so telling, though, that when people hear about these things, people who are totally removed from it, that when they hear about it, they're so affected. It's one of the reasons I'm starting to believe that it's actually a nonpartisan issue. Because at first I kind of didn't buy that. I'm like, there's just no way people on the right will ever appreciate this issue. But it does seem like it's something that's so glaring that you can get people on both sides of the aisle.
You know me, I'm still skeptical. I think the GOP is jumping on this because they think they can align themselves with some black voters on this.
Well, that's probably part. I'm sure. That's
but there's always political. There's always political reasons. But I can tell you something. If you show people the situation, like I'll tell you, I remember taking Robert Kraft to prison to see Meek. And Robert knew Meek decently well through me. We'd been on a couple trips together. And I would always talk to Robert about this. Like, we would talk about it like all the time. But when he went to prison and he spent 3 hours with Meek in prison that day, and then we left, he looked at me, he said, like, it went from like, I think he almost thought in advance, like, wow, it's interesting how much time, how obsessed you are with this, to Michael, how are we getting him out of here? Like, this is, like, he was so bothered. And he would call me like 10 times a day for the following week saying, how are we getting him out of prison? Because he was so upset by what he saw. So when people see something firsthand, which is how we're going to market at Reform, one of the things we're going to do at Reform, I'll let you know this early, is we want to find, in each state where we want to change the laws, we want to find effective people and then tell their stories. And the biggest thing that people can help us, because people say, how can they help all the time? It's find stories that you relate to and then share it in your social media, because there are so many stories like Meek's, but not for Meek. And there are, hundreds of thousands of people where you just have stories that are devastating. And if you see those stories, that's how you need to get people's, kind of heart. And that's what, like, that's how my heart, like, I got grabbed because I was there at the time. And it's what you're telling me. You have to see it firsthand.
Right. It's like a story I posted just yesterday.
I mean, most of the time it's always when someone close to you is affected. I mean, I'm sorry, but that's like the main reason why people start
That's how
caring.
everybody is. Unfortunately, though, a man just the other day, he's 81 years old.
Oh, yeah, I saw that.
He was in jail for 43 years, all the way back to 1976. He's been on death row for 43 years. He's unable to walk on his own. He just got out of prison. He's been denied justice since Jimmy Carter was president. Now, they just admitted that he was framed. Local prosecutors exonerated him, and the judge and everybody admitted that they had evidence that he was framed. And he was just now able to get out of jail. He's 81 years old. So even here locally, there was a district attorney who recently passed away named Ken Thompson. He got voted in Brooklyn. He was a Brooklyn district attorney. There was probably 3 or 4 cases here in New York City of people who did 35, 40 years. They had nothing to do with the crime because police would go around in these drag nets. Even more recently, there's a whole story here. This mentally challenged individual named Chanel Lewis, they pinned a crime on. They went around and collected DNA from 300 black men in Queens to just find somebody that they could pin this crime on after they had a mistrial and all these other things. And it was a terrible situation that happened to this jogger. They call it the Queens jogger. Mm-hmm. It's happening all over the country, though. And it's been happening if we're finding this out now.
Can you imagine?
Can you imagine what was happening in 60s?
No.
It's unfair. And before that, I mean, how many people? It's insane to think about.
No, it's crazy. The prison population in the past 30, 40 years has gone from 300,000 to 2.2 million. And that's where it's everyone wanted to get tough on crime, and they got it wrong in a lot of the cases. Now, again.
But they also wanted to get cheap labor.
Yeah. I look, I'll tell you, I don't look, it's funny. Like, I used to look at law enforcement as only protecting us. Then through Meek's eyes, I see why if you grow up the way Meek grew up, you can really grow up with a lot of, anger toward law enforcement. I mean, he was framed of a crime he didn't commit. And I try to see, I think there are a lot of, the way I look at it, I think there are good and bad people in a broken system. That's fundamentally the issue. But the system is as broken as could be.
But here's the interesting thing is, it's only broken in the eyes of good people. There are some people it's working just right for. That's what the system is. That's why they wanted the system to be that way.
The thing, and I'm embarrassed to admit this, and Meek and I joke about this sometimes, but like when a story will come out about him, of recent, I'll sometimes go read the comments just because I'm curious on what the sentiment is. And you see some of the comments, and the comments say exactly, like, put him back in jail. I'm like, you can't even believe, like, people, we've proven this guy is innocent. People are saying put him back in jail because they don't care. And you talked about the power of one judge or what one police officer can lie, and one judge can be a bad person and just ruin somebody's life. And that's what they tried to do for Meek. And fortunately, Meek had Jay-Z, and Meek had me, and Meek had, us rally.
And you know why they probably did it to him originally, to be honest with you? Is because he was popular in his neighborhood as a battle rapper.
Yeah.
And they felt like they could take advantage and make an example out of a young teenager who probably the streets were talking about, and he was revered, and they were like, you know what, we're going to take this power away from this young man because we are the strong arm of the law. And just because him and his little buddies think they got it going on, out of here, buddy. It's that simple.
And I think that sentiment in general is right. And the thing that to me makes me so happy is the way I've watched him even mature and grow since I've known him. He's been so impressive. So everything I saw in him that first day we met at the basketball game where he was, peppering me with business questions, you've seen it in the way he's developed.
The last few years, Meek has completely changed. And
Didn't he just become owner of Lids or something?
Yeah, so we did that together. So, my day job is Fanatics.
Liz too, bro?
Yeah. So,
What sports companies are left? Hold on. You Fanatics.
We're only licensed sports. So Fanatics is my primary business. So that's the largest retailer of licensed merchandise. So when you go to buy a New Era hat, you're hopefully either buying it at Lids or at Fanatics. But we operate the MLB shop. We operate the NBA
So now
store.
you operate those stores. You have Majestic.
Yeah.
A couple weeks ago, you bought Steiner Sports.
Yeah.
Which he was not thrilled about.
Yeah, that was an interesting story.
I kind of want to ask Ebro, did you see that story? You've heard of Steiner Sports before?
That's the autographs, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, it was. So apparently, the story that came out was that Steiner was at the Yankees game, and he no longer owned it, but he still operated it, and his name was on it. And he got the phone call while he was at the Yankees game that it had been sold. He went straight to the warehouse, and security was like, "Sorry, fam, you can't come in."
So without getting into it in too much detail, he had been working to buy the business and then sell it to us for years, and then
He wanted to buy it back and sell it to you.
Correct, and that was going on for a long period of time, and then. Let's say things didn't go the way they were supposed to, and then Omnicom called us, who owned it, and said, "Hey, we'd like you to buy this. Will you?" And so
now you have Steiner also.
Yeah.
So Steiner, Majestic,
Lids. What you'd really think about the big places where you buy merchandise from us is we own each of the league's e-commerce businesses. So the NFL shop, which you see advertised during every game, every week. The NBA store, NHL store, Major League Baseball store. Then we have a couple hundred individual teams, and then we own the flagship Fanatics site, and then we also make most of what we sell because we really changed the business a lot. So it used to be that we'd buy it from other licensees or vendors. Now we make a lot of what we sell as well. So it's a vertical business, which lets us best service fans. And then we recently, we together with Meek, bought half of Lids a few months ago.
How'd you not buy Mitchell and Ness yet? Being in Philly.
Yeah, Mitchell Ness is a great company. We're friendly with them. For us, everything's kind of fits into kind of a roadmap for what we think is going to help us best satisfy fans and kind of give the best outcome for the leagues and teams that we work with. But the business has grown. I'll tell you, I bought the company back from eBay in 2011. It was a $250 million company in the year before we bought it back, and next year it'll do over $3 billion. Fanatics. And then we also
you did okay.
It's working out nicely. Today it's working.
Hold on. So real quick, I'm just curious from a business standpoint. Is there a goal beyond that? Like, where do you even go from here? Do you just keep doing what you're doing?
Yeah, I'm in heaven. I mean, I have fun every day. I mean, between we have three companies, so we have Fanatics, which is my biggest business. And Fanatics owns Lids together with Meek. Okay, it's not me personally. It's Fanatics that's the owner of Lids together with Meek. And by the way, Meek was perfect for this. Like, Meek used to always say to me, like, when we were doing the deal, Meek's like, I've grown up a Lids customer my whole life. I love this brand. I can relate to this brand. So he wanted to make a significant investment into it and be a really meaningful owner of it. And for us, it was like he embodies everything that Lids is.
Yeah,
So,
he's a perfect brand ambassador and owner for what they do. Yeah.
perfect.
I think
Perfect.
I'd have been better. He doesn't wear enough hats.
Well, he'll wear more hats now, though.
Yeah, by the way,
Oh my God.
he's about to wear hats. Yeah.
You and I might need some hats, though.
Yeah.
No,
he needs a hat, too.
He does, too. I can't see under that. Under that.
He's wearing it for a reason.
Okay, I got it.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm
I
with
need
you.
some decoration of it.
Yeah, exactly. So we have that. That's my primary business. Then I also own Rue La La and Gilt, which is a big online fashion websites. Then we own another company called ShopRunner. So those are my three kind of day jobs. And then in addition, I've become obviously incredibly passionate about both the Sixers and the Reform Alliance. So for me, I have fun every day. I don't think.
I think you got enough going on.
Yeah, your
I got a lot
plate seems
going on.
full.
And so I don't think about like kind of where things go in long term. It's kind of you build each business, you build what you want to do. You just want to win every day. And to me, all days aren't great. We screw a lot of stuff up.
On
but
the
we're
Reform
winning overall.
Alliance, you guys have pledged to get 1 million people out of the criminal justice system.
That's right.
How long do you anticipate that taking?
5 years or less. By 2023, I want to have accomplished it. And I'll tell you, when we came up with that goal, I started telling people. People said, "You're nuts! Like, don't put that number out there." I said, first of all, if we put a big number out there, we're going to do everything we can to accomplish it. And I'd rather have a big number we're striving to accomplish. And even if we fall a little bit short, we will accomplish a giant amount. And I'll tell you what, today I'm more bullish that we can do more than 1 million people. Because now, what I can tell you, think about the state of Georgia. This is going to be crazy for you. In Georgia, 1 in 17 people are on probation and parole, okay? It's the worst state in the country, Okay, there's 600,000 or 700,000 people on probation and parole. In Pennsylvania, it's the third worst state in the country. 1 in 35 people. So if we can just take the set of laws that we want to change, which is capping how long you can be on probation, capping how long you can be sent to prison for technical violation.
What are those technical violations, right? Like,
Yeah, if someone's like, you shouldn't be able to go to prison because you smoked weed. You sell weed and it's illegal.
you shouldn't get pulled over and then have to go to jail for that, or run into a felon, as you said.
Correct. So I think that the three biggest reasons people go to prison for technical violations are missing your appointment, not paying your fines, or testing positive for marijuana. No one should go to prison for any of those. Okay.
Now, is in any of this, is it a whole other layer to start talking about the ability to vote as well? Because, for instance, in Florida,
it was amazing.
In Florida, right? What is it? Was it 1.5 million people? They got their rights to vote.
Yeah.
However, they have to be able to pay their fines back from when they were in jail. Most of those people, because they were in jail, don't have money to pay their fines back. So they still don't. They're still working.
It had a technicality. It sounded great, but it's not as great as it really is.
Well, yeah, they're working to keep these black and brown men specifically from being able to participate in voting.
So here's what I'm going to tell you. So I agree with you 100%. Here's what I tell you. If you look at the overall system, it's broken in every aspect of it. What we chose to do, and I learned this through screwing up in my own business. Like, the biggest thing I've done wrong in my early days, my original company, GSI Commerce, that I started in 1999, that eBay bought in 2011, I never loved our core business, so we kept doing new things. And every time we did something new, we were less effective at the core business. So when we started the Reform Alliance, I said we need to focus on one thing, which is probation and parole reform, where 2/3 of the system is made up of that. So we're only focused on probation and parole reform, where I think we can have a massive impact.
Right.
That said, I could go through every part of the system, and I think we'd agree about how many things are broken within it.
I was just wondering because I know that's a whole other layer, which likely Republicans and Democrats will not come together on, which is getting people their ability to vote.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, one of the things that scares the shit out of me is you can have what you think is a big win like that, where someone says, hey, now there's 1.5 million people can vote, but there's a technicality. What I keep saying to everybody around me is we need to make sure when we get these laws changed so that they get implemented the right way.
That's right.
So that we make sure it's having the effect that we say it's going to have.
Right.
Because I'm not interested in press releases and I'm interested in results. Like, I want to see that we're getting the effect that we want to have. And I think it's very easy to change a set of laws and then have it be implemented differently than what you think. And that's why I always say we got to make sure that we got to watch every little, cross our T's, dot our I's, make sure we're not missing anything. And then we have to implement it, make sure it has the effect that we think it's going to have.
Were you happy about the First Step Act?
I was happy about the First Step Act, and I think that Van Jones, who we brought on to run the Reform Alliance, was a key leader of that. And I think it's making a lot of progress. But the biggest thing that the First Step Act is going to do for us, actually, is it's sent a great message to Republicans that this is an issue that Republicans and Democrats can work on together. And while I have no political interest whatsoever, this is a political issue of criminal justice reform, because you got to get people on both sides to work together. So I think it was good in what it accomplished, and really impactful for educating people that both sides should work together.
Do you pay attention to politics now because of this?
I try not to. I literally don't watch the news. I get sent to me what's relevant, other than sports news. I don't really watch TV other than sports. And news is kind of depressing to me in general.
Well, no, it is.
Yeah, and so no, I don't watch much. But I care, and the only political issue I care about is criminal justice reform. And it's really, when I say care about it, I just care about having the people on board that we need to get done what we want to get done. That's where my caring starts and stops.
By the way, that's fine. I think you're doing enough. Honestly, what's the point? You don't get involved in other, be effective in the issue you care about.
Between trying to run fanatics,
I was going to say,
be responsible for rule of law and guilt and shop runner, starting the Reform Alliance.
I don't think you need to activate around politics. I was just wondering if you were paying attention, because the politicians are the ones that, unfortunately aren't paying attention, which is how these things are happening at the local and state level, and then we can't even unravel them. Part of the complications you're dealing with in trying to unravel this is because you have states being able to operate in ways that the federal government either is not paying attention to, or...
Well, so you're saying the next step, there are other pieces to the puzzle, are getting people in office who can help change things and make it easier.
Right, because, I know some people who are actively trying to get district attorneys changed and get people who look at reform a certain way instead of looking at the old way of just locking people up, keeping them under supervision, inverting that and starting to look at things differently, which is a political
And
thing.
that's the reason that we care about politics is you need to make sure you have the right people who care about this. I will say, people right now, what is amazing is when you educate people on this issue, you can generally turn them pretty quickly. You can always, everyone's got a friend who's been affected by this. You just got to find them. I didn't know I had one in Meek, and I found out, and it affected me. So you just got to educate people. So I'm actually really bullish. We put this goal out of the 1 million people. Again, I think we can do better than that. We're going to stay 100% focused on parole and probation reform. And I think that this is something where Meek will have, Meek has been tortured by the criminal justice system. He's been in and out of prison 4 times since his original arrest, never committing a new crime. He's never committed a new crime, but he's been to jail once originally and 3 additional times for never committing a new crime. I believe his last stay in prison for that 6 months was like, again, things happen for a reason. That was the eye-opening experience that could help us to reform the probation and parole system. And you know what? I think today, every day he was in there was, I know was health for him. I think he say that investment to help change this for millions of people is something that he's incredibly passionate about. And I'll tell you what's really interesting. My relationship with him has actually changed because it was only fun before this happened. It was just like 2 guys who had fun together. We were doing fun stuff. We're going to games. We were, just having fun, like living life. And now we both become so obsessed with this. Most of our conversations center around how do we fix this issue because we're both so passionate about it.
It's not so fun.
We still have a little bit of fun, but we used to be 100% fun and no business, and now it's like 80% business and a little bit of fun.
Well, we got 10 minutes with you, so we have to talk basketball. The Brooklyn Nets just made a phenomenal transition in their, I guess we'll call it their history, for lack of a better term, potentially. How do you view what the Nets just got done?
Well, look, I think it starts with the top. You've got incredible new owners in Joe and Clara Tsai. They're actually partners of ours in the Reform Alliance. So you talk about competitors on the court, partners in fixing criminal justice reform. They joined us when we started this immediately. It's a great family. They're actually they're co-founders of Alibaba, which is the most powerful e-commerce company in China.
Wow.
They bought the team, I guess, between 1 and 2 years ago, and. I think ownership starts from the top, and I think they're.
How I know they're great owners? I don't know. I didn't know who they were. They're not involved in basketball operations. They stay out of the way.
They're great. And I'll tell you what.
Knicks, you should try it.
Right.
I'm not gonna say anything about the Knicks part, but I will tell you. Look,
Joel, you should try it.
Listen,
although he has stayed out of the way over the last couple of years, and they're just still terrible.
Look, well, I could tell you that these are great owners. Obviously, I would prefer they be in the Western Conference, not the Eastern Conference. And look, KD and Kyrie are KD's probably the best player in basketball today outside of his injury. Kyrie's amazing. They put together DeAndre Jordan. He's amazing. You can't not look at what these guys have done and be blown away. They're obviously going to be an incredibly tough competitor for a long period of time. And
take me through, Michael, the feeling when it was like we were watching Hoosiers and that ball bounced around on the rim against Toronto.
You're really trying to give me PTSD now?
You've seen worse now, so I mean, a few months to reflect on it. It was one of the most heartbreaking ends to a series I've ever seen in any sport.
It was, and what I think you need to take from that is how you can, the only way that you can turn that into a positive is if the team and organization learns and grows from that. Mm-hmm. I think there are a lot of learning and growing lessons from that. I can tell you, I was the imbecile who was sitting on the floor across from where it happened, and when the ball bounced out, I was literally like this, hands up, and
it's
I
over.
4 seconds ahead when we were going to overtime. I was literally, and then the whole place went crazy, and I was I had no idea what happened.
Well, you just thought he missed. You heard the clank. The clank was so loud.
No, I saw the ball bounce right, and I'm standing like this, and everyone's. It was that felt like it was an hour of happiness I had going to overtime, and then the whole place went wild, and I was literally perplexed for the I just was stunned looking up. But look, that's what happens in sports. Sports come down to it's a game of inches, a moment that happens. And you know what a team needs to do is not give themselves, they need to not be in the position where you can lose by a shot like that. Right. You got to hand it out. You got to give it to the Raptors and to Kawhi. He's, you talk about probably, he's also an incredible, basket. Kawhi's amazing. There's nothing you can say other than he's just this amazing.
But even that shot, that shot, you guys gave him nothing, and he literally hits a fadeaway from the corner, coming up, peeling around off a curl and falling out of bounds. It's just insane.
And so the lesson from that is you can't let someone be in the game like that. And I think that we had an incredible team, and I think we were well positioned to win that game, win the series, and I think we would have been in the finals and ultimately won the finals. But that was yesterday's news. Now we're focused on winning in the next season.
You guys made some nice little moves.
Well, it's not done.
It's not done.
The Jimmy Butler.
Well, the Jimmy. I was talking more about what's the name from the Celtics? Just coming over.
Horford.
Horford's done.
Yeah, well, nothing's done until free agency approves it. I'm really, just so you know, my involvement with the Sixers. There's a group of us that bought the team in 2011. I'm the third largest donor of the Sixers. Josh Harris and David Blitzer are the managing partners. I really don't get involved in the personnel decisions. Where I spend my time is probably on the relationships. You can probably just see from my personality, I'm a relationship guy. To me, in business and sports and life, everything comes down to relationships. So certainly, I have great relationships with a lot of people playing the NBA because I think we see things and.
I love how you guys celebrate Allen Iverson. I love that.
Listen, Allen Iverson is revered in our city. Everyone loves AI. He's a great guy. By the way, he and Meek are really good friends. He was there for Meek when Meek was in prison. I caught Allen. I remember caught Allen. I'll tell you a story I've never told before you actually love. So we had these investigators that were working nonstop for us, and we found a family that had been tortured by the judge. And I remember calling Allen and saying, this guy's a big fan of yours. I need you to call him for me. And Allen, give me his number. Tell me what you need me to talk to. Because I need to get someone. Everyone was scared of the judge. So here's a family, a not well-off family who'd been tortured by this judge, and they were a tenant of the judge's. And I called Allen and said, I need you to help me get these people comfortable to talk to me. And Allen called and spent 20 minutes on the phone with them because he wanted to help Meek and help the situation because he cared that much.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's super dope. Listen, his name is Michael Rubin, and hopefully we'll see you more, man.
It was fun being here.
Yeah, man. Thanks for coming
thanks
by.
for you guys
Thanks
caring so much.
When you buy a hat, he's probably getting a little piece of the money.
So,
yeah, I mean, everyone to buy
some
hats.
sort
Buy them
of-
at Lids, Meek Benefits, buy them at Fanatics.
Yeah.
We're one big happy family.
all the hats, all the jerseys. Give
Thanks,
it up,
man.
Michael Rubin. Thank you, man.
Thank you.